Daniel 11, verse 38, he says, "But in his estate shall he honor the God, capital G, of forces, and a God, lowercase, whom his fathers knew not, shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things." The very thing we're supposed to do for God. You're supposed to be earning rewards, gold, silver, and precious stones, and then hand those to God. Well, the Antichrist here is earning these things, or he's collecting these things to deliver up to the God of forces, whomever that is. Now, he says, whom his fathers knew not. So that'd be the Jews, the Jew forefathers. They did not know. They didn't serve this God of forces. This is a new thing. We got 2 Corinthians 4. This capital G is the supreme God of forces. This is a popular word. This is not an archaic word. This is a current word that's being used every, what is it, March 4th, whatever that day is, that's Star Wars Day. May 4th. Yeah, the Force. 2 Corinthians 4, verse 4. Just happens to be a 4. "In whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them." They don't want the image of God, they're going to get the image of the beast. And he's the God, lowercase, of this world. This world is run by a force. You can't ignore it. The more your eyes are open to the supernatural, spiritual things, you'll realize there's something at work that's a spirit. Doesn't make sense in a rational mindset. This thing that you hear all the time is, "May the force be with you." Okay, well, that's only true if you spend eternity in hell with the forces God. That's where he's going. So they're running around saying, "May the force be with you." One day it's going to show up, and that's going to be a literal thing, and the force will be with them. But it won't be a force they want once they get it. This force is an unseen magnetic field. In the martial arts, they recognize it as chi. It's a supernatural thing that's supposed to give you power, and it does. It's spiritual. Look at it in Luke chapter 10. Luke 10, verse 18. Jesus gives a prophecy here. Now, of course, he's on the other side of time, so he can give it as though he's seeing it backwards. And here's what he says. Luke 10, verse 18. "And said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven." That's a static force, lightning. And that's how he's described. Look at it in Revelation 13. Revelation 13, verse 12. And remind me if we ever finish tonight. I may go back to Revelation 13 and pick up. No, I think I'll get it on another verse, but there's a whole lot in Revelation 13. Revelation 13, verse 12. "And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." He causes worship. That's a force, that's a power. That becomes an addicting power. That's one of the things that the devil sinks these stars with, is if they'll serve him, he'll allow them some power to demand worship. And they do. Look at it in Jeremiah 48. Jeremiah 48, 45. Everybody has to run to a higher power. I know people don't want to admit it, but they do. You're either counting on the devil as your higher power or God. There's only two. And those are two higher powers, higher than man. Jeremiah 48:45. And they that fled stood under the shadow of Heshbon because of the force. But the fire shall come forth out of Heshbon, and the flame from the midst of Shion, and shall devour the corner of Moab, and the crown of the head of the tumultuous ones. There God says, I'm going to make the fire come out of them. Hmm. And one day it's going to, right out of the devil. He's going to spontaneously combust, and there's his home right in the midst of his own fire. The God of Forces, capital G. This is a definite article here. It's not a God of Forces. It's the God of Forces. It's a specific God. He's identifying him. You find this all through the Bible. It'll identify as a specific entity you're supposed to recognize. We've talked about it in 2 Corinthians 4. Look at it in John 14. John 14, verse 30. He says, Hereafter, this is Jesus speaking, I will not talk much with you, for the prince of this world cometh and hath nothing in me. It's the prince, not a prince, the prince. It's a specific one. John 16. This is a verse you ought to know. John 16:11. This is the job of the Holy Spirit. John 16:11. Of judgment, because the prince of this world is judged. He's judged, but he's not sentenced yet. Big difference. He will be at the end of Revelation. Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2, verse 2. And here you see this God of force explained clearly. Ephesians 2:2. Wherein in time past you walk according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So this force is not only a magnetic drawing force, it's also a spirit. And you'll find if you're saved, the Holy Spirit's in you. And he's comfortable some places and not comfortable other places, and you may not have a reason for it. But that's the spirits in conflict. Revelation 20. Revelation 20, verse 2. Here's the point of all of these definite articles has finally been defined definitively here. Revelation 20, verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. There he is. So they want to make the dragons a good thing. There's nothing good about a dragon in the Bible. A dragon breathes fire. That's hell. We don't want to be anywhere near that. I don't like the idea of people want to do these trips where they go inspect volcanoes. Keep me away from that. I don't. That's fire. That came down. That came up from downstairs. I'll leave that one alone. Look at it in Psalm 10, verse 15. All through the Psalms, you find this definite article referring to the Antichrist, to the devil incarnate. Psalm 10, verse 15. Now, notice how you can use it both ways, but it's pointing to something specific. Break thou the arm of the wicked. Now, you could say the wicked, meaning a generalization of a group. However, I think it's going to talk about a specific person. Watch it. And the evil man, not men, man. Seek out his wickedness till thou find none. Look at it in Zechariah 11. Zechariah 11:17. Here's where that actually gets fulfilled. Zechariah 11:17. Woe to the, what's that word? Idol. Not not idle as in going nowhere. It means idol that you bow down and worship. Hmm. And there's going to be an image to that thing that's going to be an idol people worship. Woe to the idol shepherd. Yes, he is an idol shepherd because he has a flock. The whole world is flocked to him. That leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall utterly be darkened. There he is. That's that definite article pointing right to him. His broken arm is found again in Jeremiah 48. Jeremiah 48:25. Jeremiah 48:25. Moab's never a good place. You find there's an issue in the book of Ruth has to do with Moab. Hmm. Jeremiah 48:25. The horn of Moab is cut off, and his arm is broke, saith the Lord. Hmm. Now that's over and over. You find these leaders that have Parkinson, and they put their hand in because they're holding their hand. Something wrong with that hand. Hitler, Charlemagne, Napoleon, one after the other, they all do this thing. They're all pictures of the big one to come, and he ain't showed up yet. Uh, Moab, that's in Kirioth. Find it in Jeremiah 48:24. And upon Kiriath and upon Basra and upon the cities of the land of Moab, far and near. He's identifying a specific place. That's where Judas Iscariot comes from. It's on the other side of Jordan, not Israel proper, but the east side there. Iscariot means Kirioth. We got it in Zechariah 11:17. He said, "Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth his flock." He's got a flock, and his flock ain't like our flock. His flock is a bunch of wolves, and if you run into them, you'll know it. They want to bite and devour you just as quick as they can. So look at it in Jeremiah 48:24. No, we already saw that one. Jeremiah 48. That's where he's talking about he's identified it in the land. Look at it in 2 Corinthians 4:4. He says, "The God of this world, the prince, the power of the air." Those are all identifying things. Now, you can take those generally. Generally, it's so. And you can take a lesson from it generally. However, God's pointing out something specific doctrinally. Doctrinally, there is a specific individual person that's coming back. And when he does, he lands and makes a mess. Daniel 11, verse 39. Thus, we've already seen who we're talking about, the devil. Thus shall he do with the most strongholds, with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. A whole lot in that verse. There's something in that verse that seems a little, not a little, but a big lot off. Big lots off. He says, and he shall cause them to rule over many. Who's the them? The strongholds, you could say, because that's a plural. But strongholds are not a them. Strongholds are an inanimate object. So what could this be? It could be the God of forces, more than likely. But that's a singular, not a plural. But you find something. Our God is one, but he's three. The Antichrist is going to be a multiplication of evil spirits. Mm. So when you talk about him, you're also talking about them. Mm. Look at it in Mark 4. Mark 4:4. Notice this singular and plural get mixed up. Mark 4:4. And it came to pass as he sowed, this is the sower and the seed, some fell by the wayside, and the fowls of the air came and devoured it up. Fowls, that's plural. Verse 15. These are they by the wayside where the word is sown, but when they've heard, Satan cometh. Is that a singular or plural? Now it's singular. But he said it was fowls earlier. So it can be used either way. Immediately, and taketh away the word that is sown in their hearts. Get in 1 Kings 18. Elijah with the prophets of Baal. 1 Kings 18:25. You know the story here. It's a showdown between God and Baal, two arch enemies, and they're going to have it out through their prophets. Verse 25. And Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, choose you one bullock for yourselves and dress it first, for ye are many, and call on the name of your gods, plural, not God singular, but put no fire under. And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it and called upon the name of God's plural? No, Baal, a singular. All the way through the Bible does this. It mixes the plural and the singular. To tell you what's going on here, look at it in Mark 5:8. Mark 5:8. Jesus casting out the devil here. For he said unto him, come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. How many is that? You'd think one. Verse 9. And he asked him, what is thy name? And he answered and said, my name is Legion, for we are many. He, we, me, huh? Look at it in Matthew 12. Matthew 12, verse 43. It's almost like they're a cluster, like your molecules and atoms that separate and come back together, and many becomes one, and one can divide up into many. He says in Matthew 12:43, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and finding none. Then he saith, I will return unto the house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. That is, this man's done his New Year's resolution and decided he's going to clean up, but there was no spirit of God power behind it. 45. Then goeth he, the spirit, and taketh with himself 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be unto this wicked generation. Okay, so that singular is a multiple. I think that he's saying here, and he shall cause them to rule over many. The them is the evil spirits. The Father, we know in Revelation 12, he's going to pull a third of the angels out of heaven. And that's part of the them there that is going to be ruling his subjects down here on earth. Daniel 2, verse 43. Daniel 2:43, whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. There's the multiple that we're talking about. That's the they. They is the them. In Revelation 12:3, he said this, and there appeared a wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. So we think of an individual as a single person. This thing right here, the devil shows up as a multiplier of personalities all in one being. So it's not like we can't make his likeness on earth. Revelation 17:12. Revelation 17:12. These supernatural beings, the them, that are running these strongholds. Here they are, Revelation 17:12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Now, it could be these things are getting power as kings because they're not human. Mm. They're principalities and powers. And they're receiving an office that a human would hold, a king position. Mm. Yes. He says uh, in our verse in Daniel 11, wherever we are, 30, 38, 39, he shall divide the land for gain. Now that's the problem. God's particular about Israel. You start messing with Israel, he gets real mad. That's his land. He'll decide who gets to squat on it. Now, he's dividing it up for coinage, for change. He wants money out of it. That's the danger in the political system. When a political figure decides he's going to make peace in the Middle East, they always have to fool with the land of Israel. That's the rub over there in the Middle East is Israel. So you've got to deal with Israel. If you're going to have peace in the Middle East, you got to start dividing up property. And you know what? You can't do a peace deal without somebody gaining. I would so hate to be a political figure that has to sit on boards and all that stuff and make determinations about peace in the Middle East because you're taking the position of the Antichrist. Whew, not a good spot to be in. Matter of fact, the last one who did it was Trump. And before it was all over, he started siding with the other side. I've got the recording on it. Um, Benjamin Netanyahu was not too thrilled about the proposal and made it known to him. And when Trump dealt with the Arabs, they were smooth talkers. And he said they were like a father to him. That's a bad wording. Uh, God's answer to this dividing up his land, Isaiah 17. Isaiah 17:13. I like these verses where God says, I'm looking down and they're working themselves to death and I'm just sick of it. So I just stop them. Isaiah 17:13. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far away, far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like rolling thing before the wind. And behold, that eventide trouble. Eventide, that's a phrase that's an odd phrase. It's a pictorial word. You don't have a tide that has to do with when it's daylight or night, but he says eventide because the whole world is lying in wickedness. That is, we're in the midst of something. We're in the midst of the great deep. Well, guess what? That deep has a tide. Hmm. He's saying here the eventide. Eventide trouble. And before the morning, he is not. And the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them rob us. That's what the nations are trying to do to Israel in the end. Look at it in Isaiah 44:9. Isaiah 44:9. He says, you want to make money on my property? I think not. Isaiah 44:9. They that make a graven image are all of them vanity, and their delectable things shall not profit. And they are their own witness. They see not, they know not, that they may be ashamed. That is, they're so stupid, they're not even embarrassed when they should be. You've seen that. A kid does something stupid, and he ought to be embarrassed about it, and he's not. And you feel like you're embarrassed for him because that's what God's saying right here. They're all acting like the stupid image they just made. Now, in the tribulation, there's going to be an image and the people are going to be worshiping it. He says, If you worship an image, you become like the image. They're going to be like their father, the devil. Hmm. Assyria has this same trouble. Isaiah 36. Isaiah 36:16. Anybody who's messed with the land of Israel, they always mess with it to profit themselves, to make a gain somewhere. That's the position of the Antichrist, and God don't like it. Isaiah 36:16. Hearken not to Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by a present, make me some profit, and come out to me, and eat every man, uh, uh, and eat ye every one of his vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink ye every one the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Uh, Beware lest Hezekiah persuade you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Hath any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? There, the king of Assyria says, I'm bigger than God, and I've decided this is my land. Come on, I've seen plenty of lands just as good as this, and I'll give you that. Whew. Talk about a fist in God's face. That's exactly what that was. Look at it in Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah 51:1. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me a destroying wind. God doesn't have to get extravagant. A wind will do it. Now, we know we've been through some hurricanes. Yeah, wind can be scary. Verse 2. And will send upon Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. That is, God's going to stir up not only nature itself, but other humans to come against them. Verse 3. Against him that breatheth, let the archers bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. This is of God telling the heathens to destroy each other. Kind of like what we saw with Gideon there. The heathen started killing each other just because God said, oh, God, I'm tired of messing with y'all. Go ahead and kill each other. And they lose their mind and start killing each other. Verse 6, here's an important verse. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense, because they came against Israel, which God told them to do, because Israel needed to be punished. But it doesn't mean that God was happy with Nebuchadnezzar. It doesn't mean that Nebuchadnezzar became a Christian or Babylon converted to Christianity. No, they were just a temporary spanking stick. And when God gets done with it, he destroys the spanking stick. Now, these are all pointing to the big event. The big event, Revelation 18. Revelation 18, verse 2. This is Mystery Babylon, similar to Babylon. I like that the Bible just uses simple words to help you remember things and connect dots. Okay. And he cried mightily with strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils. There's that plural. And the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean, hateful bird. People think of birds as being nice. Own one and find out how nice they are. They can snap your finger in half. Verse 3. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. The merchants of the earth, there's that money, are waxen rich through the abundance of her delicacy. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, just like we read earlier, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. This is something that happens over and over. It seems like there's a space. God gives everybody a space. And if the iniquity abounds, it's like he's allowing it to accrue. And when it gets to a certain level, he says, now it's time to do something. He says, oh, yeah, I remember they were accruing some debt over there. Let me go pull the books out on that one. And that's what he's done. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double, double trouble from God. Daniel 11, and I probably don't have time to do the rest of this. I don't. Um, let's see. Now, I'll give you a little taste of it. I'm not going to delve into it, but you can do it on your own. Daniel 11:40 to 43 is a event that happens. You don't hear people talk about this. The Bible does. It tells you there's going to be not peace in the Middle East, but warfare, even with the Antichrist ruling things. There's a battle that goes on in the tribulation against the Antichrist with other heathens. And he's going to talk about it. Verse 40 to 43, and we'll cover it in detail next time. All right, we better cut it off there, and we'll pick up all that next time.